Silk City Hot Sauce. A small batch hot sauce prepared with farm-grown peppers. Rich and vibrant taste, no artificial ingredients, 100% pure goodness. 8 flavors from mild to wild. The sweet and spicy Mango Madness. The green jalapeno sauce called Aztec Attack. The Dragon features fire-roasted peppers and pure Vermont maple syrup. Killer hot sauces for the true hot sauce fanatic. A blend of ghost peppers, habanero peppers, honey, and garlic, and more. You gotta see the bottles, too. Each flavor has original comic book artwork. You gotta see them. Go to silkcityhotsauce.com. silkcityhotsauce.com. Enter promo code ED, ED, to save 15%, and you'll also receive a free bottle of hot sauce. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. Hey, if you have something you want to promote, like a business or a website, you got a big event coming up, consider advertising on the Opperman Report. We have excellent advertising rates for you. We're on KCAA on 3 different frequencies on AM/FM in California, KSHP 1400 AM in Nevada, WWPR in Florida, the Tampa Bay area, 1490 AM, and also WWNN, which is on the east coast of Florida, all the way from Miami up to Port Bay, with 175 miles of I-95. The advertising rates are very affordable. Once your ad goes up and we play the show on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, those ads stay up there forever. And then we play repeats every single night of classic Opperman Report shows. And your new ads will be inserted into those repeats that play every single night. So the saturation is incredible, and the rates are very affordable. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Oh boy, welcome to the Opperman Report. And you know, it's James Arthur Jancic, I think you pronounce it, Jancick, who does the voiceover on my what is it? Socialist International there, you know, and he does the voiceover with the Opperman Report. I want to give a shout out to Feet to the Fire and James Arthur Jancic, who helped me out with that. I love hearing that, and he's such a cool guy. We have with us now Ted Rubenstien. Ted, are you there?
I am here.
Hey, bro, what's going on, man?
Well, you want to know what the tie-in is between Joel Selvin's book and the octopus?
I love this guy. Ted, first tell everybody who you are. Tell who's Ted Rubenstien real quick, because this is a Saturday show. A lot of people, it's not the same audience of the Friday show. So real quick, who are you?
I'm a long-time researcher in the area of parapolitics, most specifically organized crime, the intelligence community, assassinations, cover-ups, drug trafficking, that kind of thing.
Ted's a humble...
I've been studying... Go ahead.
Yeah, Ted is a humble guy. I got to tell you that. Ted Rubenstien is JFK royalty. He's a researcher royalty, all this kind of old conspiracy royalty. He worked for Mae Brussels. He worked for Dave Emery. He worked for Larry Flint doing it.
I have to correct that.
Oh, go ahead.
I worked for Larry Flint, and I worked with the other two.
Okay.
to varying degrees.
I got you. And but you know, my God, great. And you get Ted on the phone, and he just goes off into different directions. He's like me with the connections. You know, he's got the connections. What's the connections to Joel Selvin and Octopus?
Well, it's not a huge connection, but it's a somewhat obvious one. Of course, it's the Hell's Angel.
Okay.
And because so many tentacles of the octopus involve drug trafficking, and some of it involves drug trafficking in really interesting places like Fresno, California. And when you're involved with the meth in places like Fresno, California, invariably it's going to involve Hell's Angel.
Yeah.
So it turns up in a few places in the notes and so on. And also, I should add, since you're familiar with Ted Gunderson, with some of the people that Ted Gunderson was associating with, they were linked to the bikers. And it's really interesting, the FBI filed on Gunderson, which reflects their knowing that he was hanging out with drug traffickers, but it's still not really clear why he was doing that. Whether he was just getting information, because there's a long interview he did with the main whistleblower in this whole thing, Michael Riconosciuto. I can't really emphasize how important he is, and also how controversial a figure he is. But Gunderson did a really interesting, looks very revelatory interview with Riconosciuto that I haven't had time to digest. But I just don't know where to place Gunderson, whether he's a white hat or black hat or a little of both. That whole thing with Stu Webb is just bizarre.
Yeah.
And but anyway.
Well, because the reason why we're getting into this is we're revisiting the story of Danny Casserlero and the octopus and the Promise software and that whole story. Now, you sent me some things to touch on with you here, and I really appreciate that.
Yes.
Adnan Khashoggi, how does he fit into this?
Okay. You put me off a little by saying that this is a different audience, so I'm likely to have heard the other broadcast, part one, you might say. So I guess I'm going to have to do some background.
Only slightly different. Only slightly different. So.
Okay, because the octopus to a large extent focused on the theft of the Inslaw software, which belonged to a couple called the Hamiltons in Washington, who developed this case management software that was just the bee's knees at the time, and the Justice Department showed immediate interest in it, in buying it and then developing it. And they ended up, in effect, stealing it from the Hamiltons and letting it loose all around the world, to the Saudis, to the Israelis, to the Canadians. I mean, you name it, they had it. But with this backdoor feature that allowed U.S. intelligence to be monitoring it. Anyway, so that's just the bare bones of the Inslaw software connection. And there were many investigations, and they drew contrary conclusions as to whether the Justice Department really acted with malfeasance here. But to me, the matter is pretty much settled. And this document alone, which I'm going to read you about Khashoggi. Okay, here we go. This is dated May 16th, 1985. It's addressed to William Weld, U.S. Attorney. It's signed by W. Bradford Reynolds, Assistant Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division. I'm going to first read the document and then comment on it. As agreed, Messrs. Manukur Ghorbanifar, Adnan Khashoggi, and Richard Armitage will broker the transaction of Promise software to Sheikh Khalid bin Mahfouz for resale and general distribution as gifts in his region, contingent upon the three conditions we last spoke of. Promise must have a soft arrival, no paperwork, customs, or delay. It must be equipped with a special data retrieval unit. As before, you must walk the financial aspects through Credit Suisse International Commercial Bank. If you encounter any problems, contact me directly.
Wow. And people should know that Khashoggi is best buddies with none other than Donald Trump.
And this is going on at the time of these Iran arms dealings with the Israelis and the Reagan administration, arms for hostages with Iran, which later mushroomed to the Iran-Contra and then the drug connection on top of that. So this is the time period, 1985. This is the part that astounds me. I was just thinking, someone's got to come along and tell me that this document is not real, that it's a forgery. What do I find out? Well, almost the opposite. I found out that someone who's writing a book on former Attorney General Elliot Richardson, who is undoubtedly a white hat in this affair, one of the few Justice Department people who definitely, to my satisfaction, wears a white hat in this whole thing. He represented Inslaw, tried to get to the bottom of it, what I can determine. This guy was writing a book about Richardson, and it never came out. But in the process of writing the book, he got a hold of this memo, and he showed it to William Bradford Reynolds to see whether he would authenticate it. And to his astonishment, Bradford Reynolds said, yes, he remembered it. And that he had signed it because, I forget whether it was Jensen or Meese. Meese was Reagan's attorney general who had all these scandals under him, like WedTech and this one. But also Jensen was another guy who was a dubious character who was working right under Meese. I forget whether he was signing this on behalf of Jensen or Meese, but he said he signed this document. You remember signing it, and they did it because Meese or Jensen was out of the office that day.
And refresh my memory, the document says it
document instructs these nefarious people to conduct this very unorthodox transaction, and this is on Justice Department Civil Rights Division stationery. Now, I should add, the person who sent this to the Hamiltons assured them that you're not going to find any copies of this document. They've been destroyed, but you've got this one. That's how it came to be released. And as I'm telling you, there's apparent partial confirmation. Now, I spoke to Michael Best. We spoke about it before, but Michael Best, this just incredible archivist, just been uploading all these documents, whether about the Kennedy assassination, the Walker shooting, the CIA, or this octopus scandal. He's just apparently uploaded 1 million files or something just staggering amount.
And he's uploading into archive.com, it's called, archive.org. What is it?
He's got a bunch of them. One is Glomar Disclosure. One is That One Archive, the THAT, the number one archive. He's got them archived several different places. I'm going to refer in a while to the Facebook one, which is Glomar Disclosure, because that's going to be pertinent to some of the things we bring up, I believe.
Okay.
Especially if you bring up things like Foster. So anyway, he has said, yes, okay, he agrees with me that, yes, this has been partly authenticated, but that we shouldn't, get too busy about it because that isn't a complete authentication. And I agree. One person's recollection, maybe he has an axe to grind, maybe, maybe who knows, maybe he wants to get back on the, yeah, that's true. Who knows what. So, or maybe he's, who knows what's going on with him. But so it's not full confirmation. But William Weld, did I mention that he's on the vice presidential ticket? He's the vice presidential nominee for the Libertarian ticket under Gary Johnson.
That guy?
Yes, William Weld. So the guy who this is addressed to, this is just amazing. The guy who this is addressed to is the Libertarian candidate, Libertarian vice presidential candidate. And that's, Johnson is getting more attention than Jill Stein. I can assure you. Not that either of them are really going to get much, but
I can probably get Weld on the show. I can ask him about this.
There was on Facebook. They left a phone number, so I left a message.
Okay.
I left my name and number. I didn't say why I was calling, but this is my question for William Weld. Do you remember this letter? And is this the standard way you were conducting business routine business, or was it not routine business at the Justice Department when you were working there? Because this is really this just reeks of being a smoking gun.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I bet you, too, the National Enquirer would publish that right now because Weld is splitting the Trump's vote. And Trump got them in his pocket.
Wait, say that again?
Trump's got the National Enquirer in his pocket. There's no doubt about that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he has no interest in going after the Libertarian candidates, does he?
Well, sure, because the Weld is splitting the Trump vote. All the conservatives are going, if they don't go to Trump, they're going to go to Weld and the Libertarians. So it would be in Trump's interest if he wasn't just throwing this whole thing in the bag. Who the hell knows at this point, because it's so bizarre and crazy. Who knows what's going on with this election?
I think, because the Enquirer kept pushing the Ted Cruz with Lee Harvey Oswald. Ted Cruz's father with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
So they're kind of tainted with these presidential scandals, if you ask me.
No, I don't think they would. I don't think they would hesitate in a second to go with this. Now you said something too here.
You're wrong.
Okay,
this is a career killer, but it might not. Who knows? They could be bold enough to do it.
We've got to get it out there.
But it might be too obscure for the average supermarket tabloid reader.
Yeah, because they only know about...
they'd have to explain so much background, wouldn't they?
True, because they only know of Khashoggi from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Now,
Khalid bin Mahfouz, do you know who he is? He's like the leading guy in BCCI. He's like a superpower among the Saudis. He may be dead now, I don't know. But he is so important. And then he's linked here with Ghorbanifar and Khashoggi in the secret transaction where the back door must be included in the promised software, and these financial aspects must be walked through. I think it said as before. Yes, as before. So he's done it before. Weld has done this before.
Oh, wow.
The financial aspects through Credit Suisse into the National Commercial Bank. If you encounter any problems, contact me directly. So I don't know if I think I did ask Michael Best whether he had contacted William Weld. I don't think he answered me. He did answer a lot of my questions, though.
Now that's up on his website.
No,
you have that exclusively.
No, I don't have it exclusively. It's in. For example, I think it's in the book The Last Circle by Sherry Seymour under the name Carol Marshall. If you look at the book, you find that Carol Marshall, I believe. The Last Circle. But yeah, it's fairly well known. I mean, I wouldn't say it's commonplace. Not everything you read about Inslaw or Casserlero is going to mention this, but it's in a lot of places. It's certainly not an exclusive of mine, by no means.
Okay. Now you mentioned, too, it got my interest here. You said there's a connection to Henderson, Nevada, where I live.
Yeah, now that's really obscure.
Okay.
It has to do with a lawyer named Erickson and a suit involving a mining contract dispute. And one of the people who's in Riconosciuto's corner is this British Colombian woman named Anita Langley. She's been involved with this for a long time. And I think she's helping to, provide for Riconosciuto's comforts while he's still in prison, although I heard he's getting out soon. He's got health problems. And also to see that he gets some justice for his allegations. And that his files and stuff get brought forward. Some of them have been, but some of them are still locked away in storage units and so on. So anyway, the reason I mentioned her is because she pops up on this Glomar Disclosure webpage, Facebook page, which is a Michael Best Facebook page, and she has an interchange with Michael Best on there. And she is a person who I've been in contact with myself, but she's one of these people that spooks easily, and she got spooked. Something about me spooked her.
Okay.
It might have been over this woman called Valerie McCullough. That's another thing. I don't really. That's another tentacle with no reason to get into. She got into beef with Dave Emery, and I'm associated with Dave Emery. But anyway, whatever Nita Langley thinks who I'm tuned in with, and obviously I'm my own entity. I'm not responsible for what anyone says or thinks or says on the air, whether it's Dave Emery or certainly not Virginia McCullough. So anyway, this suit, as near as I can figure, involved a company, a company named Trackmaster was suing a bunch of individuals, one of whom was Riconosciuto and one of whom was Anita Langley, and some mining outfit that she somehow was associated with in 2010. Now, as it happens, it's hard for me to make sense of these lawsuits, but I believe the way I read it, that the Henderson, Nevada lawyer, Erickson, was representing this combination called Tapestry Team or something like that. That was the Michael Riconosciuto, Anita Langley, and company defendants. Or were they the plaintiffs? I think they were the defendants, as I believe. So that's the Henderson, Nevada connection. As I say, it's pretty obscure.
Okay, when you mentioned, too, that the Moonies play a role in exposing this.
Well, yes, I thought this was a little ironic because, you see stuff about how the Moonies are just the devil incarnate,
right?
Right-wing, machine. But, in fact, with this particular story, they ran a 4-part series, I guess it was the mid-'90s, in their publication called Insight, written by Kelly O'Meara. And what she did is she came into possession, she got the whole story from the Canadian RCMP investigators that were investigating how the Canadian intelligence happened to have the Promise software. The Canadians did a huge investigation, and they let this Kelly O'Meara of Insight magazine in on it. And she just has so many details in there that really, help, flesh out our knowledge of Inslaw from its, it's not from a conspiracy site on the internet,
Right.
They checked out everything before they printed it, and it was from responsible people, as I say, RCMP investigators. And it was just a magnificent piece of work. I think you can still find it on the internet. But Insight eventually went out of business, but it was owned by the Moonies, and I just think that's kind of ironic. Because they were doing the kind of investigative reporting that the rest of the mainstream media wasn't doing. Now, admittedly, the mainstream media did cover Danny Casserlero's death in considerable coverage when it happened, but they quickly faded the story when it came out that, this is just conspiracy mongering, et cetera, et cetera. The usual way they discredit these people. Plus which, the supposed suicide verdict.
Right.
Hasn't soured the media on covering it anymore.
Now you mentioned, too, how many other murders are involved in this Danny Casserlero and the Promise software and Octopus, all that stuff? How many more murders?
I don't know if I can really quantify it because one aspect of this thing is it involves so many different drug rings. Some of them tied into each other, but some of them operating somewhat independently. But they all have these things in common, like CIA and, protection from people in law enforcement and so on. They were all the things in common. But each of these drug rings seem to involve a few murders here and there. So then plus with the Octopus itself, people who gave Danny information, like this guy, Danny Standorf. I think he was the NSA, but I can't swear to that. He ended up dead. And there were other people that were just giving him information that came to a bad end, and they weren't involved in drug rings.
And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be. because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland street scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
No.
No, then what is it then?
They were on the one hand they were profiting the people in the Justice Department or their crooked friends were profiting financially off selling this to everyone and his mother.
Right.
But U.S. intelligence was benefiting it by installing this trapdoor capability so that everyone who was using that software, the CIA could see what was in their file. But I don't think they pull one over on the Israelis like that, because the Israelis, they've been at this game too long. They're the pioneers of it. But that's a speculation on my part. But yes, that's my understanding, and I'm not a computer guy, but that is my understanding of what the backdoor capability allows them. But you bring up another point, which is the way money is transferred internationally electronically.
Right.
It involves these two systems called SWIFT and CHIPS. And that's supposedly a way of making it easier for people to transfer money overseas. But Danny was investigating the possibility that these systems were being used to loot people's accounts and to transfer money, unauthorized money overseas, all kinds of stuff. So there's that aspect of it. Some of it involves secret technology, even remote viewing, even the occult. I mean, crazy stuff.
Wait a second.
There's just one thing.
How does the occult and remote viewing, how does that fit in?
Okay, if my memory serves me, one of the guys who was involved with a major component of this is developing technology, some of it which went to the Contras, which was developed on Indian reservations because they're off limits to law enforcement. That is also where Reconnosciuto was modifying the promised software for use by the intelligence agencies and also for the profit of Neese, Jensen, and all Reagan's pals in the Justice Department at that time. This is like just a mammoth racketeering, influence, corrupt organization enterprise. It's all you can call it.
I got a question from the chat room. Do you think that Bitcoin is involved in this now?
I need to make a note about Cabazon because I need to get back to that. Sorry, what was the question?
Do you think that Bitcoin might be involved in this kind of stuff now?
No, that's too it's beyond my depth.
Right.
But I just find it crazy that one Bitcoin is worth what is it worth? Like $500 or something? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't know the first thing about it, and I don't know how it applies to what I'm talking about.
Okay. And then what about the Church of Scientology? Any connections in all this to the Church of Scientology? They seem to have their hands in everything.
That's an interesting question. The only reason I mentioned that Church of Scientology comes to mind is because it affected the way I originally regarded Ted Gunderson.
Okay.
Because at the time I was seeing Mae Brussel, I knew this guy who was on the fringes of Scientology, but he was really interested in the political aspects and how Mae Brussel's research could be used by the Scientologists. And they had a very political wing. They had a magazine called Freedom, which was just great. I don't know if you ever saw that thing. Freedom magazine was great.
Sounds familiar.
But anyway, the Scientologists from the jump were very suspicious of Gunderson, and they didn't believe that he'd really retired fully from the FBI, that somehow he was still playing the role of disinformation agent. And I was pretty persuaded by that. And then stuff I saw later on sort of confirmed that, at least like his palling around with Robert Booth Nichols to the extent that he did. But I've come to realize that everyone was apparently palling around with Robert Booth Nichols, who got involved in tracking this thing. And I think because he had so much information to impart. So they weren't necessarily friends with him, but they were just getting so much information from him that, so they kept taking his phone calls, and it seemed like a suspicious relationship. But as I say, I have not come to a decision on what Gunderson, whether he's a white hat or a black hat or both.
Well, did I tell you that I had a client who ran into Ted Gunderson at the FBI headquarters in L.A., like right before he died, like a month before he died?
You might have.
Yeah. So he.
I know. Did you hear that he's being poisoned? He'd been poisoned before, he claims, and supposedly his death was caused by poison. Do you know anything about that?
No. The people who say the poison, I haven't seen any credibility in that. Have you?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Because they the people around Ted, wild cast of characters. You got to listen to the interview with Doug Millar that I did because he.
The FBI files on him are fascinating.
Oh, really? What do you got?
Well, I don't know. I can't imagine, but the littlest thing would get you punished. While he was at the FBI, and so he had a bunch of little infractions. But at other times they were just, really applauding, that he was a great diligent agent. Sometimes at the beginning, one guy was saying that he was lazy, though, so it's like going both ways. But then after he retired, then he was, exposing all this government malfeasance. They really started to, bring out the dirt on him, which included his, palling around with narcotics traffickers.
All right.
But let me go back to the Cabazon Reservation because, as I mentioned, that they were using it because it offered safe haven from, snooping eyes, so the government could be, adapting the software in their own way using Reconnosciuto, who later on gets discredited by being involved in drugs himself, although that's nothing new with him. The whole time he's carrying on this activity, he's manufacturing drugs because he's a chemist. He's a chemical whiz. He's been making drugs ever since college. But it can be used to discredit him. But he also discredited himself by a lot of his stories, a lot of the aspects of his story that he didn't check out, but a lot of it does check out. And I can give you my theory on that, but I'd rather get back to the Cabazon. they were training they were using like high-tech weapons, testing high-tech weapons on the reservation, and some of it was being supplied to the Contras. They were also involved in gambling rackets involving organized crime figures on the same, which was a tiny reservation, by the way, the Cabazon near Palm Springs. And then it really became infamous when there was this triple murder of Fred Alvarez. I'm just going to read the first couple of sentences of this. Arrested in 1981, tribal murders revives old mystery. This is 2009 Associated Press. In the days before Fred Alvarez was shot execution style with two friends on his veranda, the strapping Cabazon tribal leader feared he was a marked man. His motorcycle had been tampered with, the mailbox shut up, and his house ransacked. He visited the local newspaper several times to say that he had uncovered something big enough to get him killed. He arranged to talk with a lawyer to divulge what he knew, but he never made the meeting. So there was this triple murder. One of the participants came forward and confessed his involvement, and that's what this article is about, is Jimmy Hughes. And then for some reason, when his hearing came up, they decided that they weren't going to prosecute Jimmy Hughes, despite his confession to having done this. And they hinted that there was some new evidence that came before the prosecutors, and so they're going to drop this murder charge. And as I mentioned on my other program, Jimmy Hughes is a born-again Christian, and so that's why he came forward and has renounced past life. But does that make him not credible? It just amazes me when they, it sort of fits the facts, and you've got a guy admitting to it, and yet behind the scenes they just have a hearing, and then, they decide there's nothing to it, let's just drop this. This is indication of this whole damn thing. Just cover up. Okay, so let me get to this. One of the reasons I wanted to get to the Cabazon thing is the way that what was going on there touched on people that are involved in the S&L scandals. I can't emphasize how much this octopus touched on every banking scandal that was going on at the time, whether it was BCCI, the Newman Hand, which was a couple of years earlier, or the BNL, the Arms to Iraq, that bank. All of these were involved. And one task force, which they called, but I think it was an FBI task force called the BCCI BNL task force, was investigating Danny Casserlero's death and deciding, and they posed a bunch of questions that they wanted resolved about the investigation and whether it constituted a reason to get involved under the Interstate Trafficking in Aid of Racketeering statute. Half of the FBI agents that were investigating this did not believe that Danny Casserlero committed suicide, and they were urging it to be reinvestigated, but the net result is it wasn't. And one of the guys that was involved in the SNL thing was this guy Wayne Leader. He's all over the documents. Another guy who was involved in the SNL, who's linked to organized crime and other, I think another Indian reservation is Kansas, is Mario Renda. His name is all over Casserlero's note. And a couple of really good books I'll recommend at this point. But one about the SNL scandals and the organized crime connections and some CIA connections was by Stephen Pizzo and Mary Fricker, and I forget the name of that one, but another book that came out around the same time is an amazing book by an ex-reporter of the Houston Post named Pete Bruton. That book was called The Mafia, the CIA, and George Bush. And that really tied in a lot of these SNL to the CIA and the Mafia, or both, and to the George Bush milieu. And while I'm mentioning books, I'm going to mention another book that just came in the mail today. Have you ever heard of this guy, Rodney Stitch? He's written a bunch of books about these government scandals.
Sound familiar.
This book is called Defrauding America, but he's got at least 10 books. This is like the third edition, and it's like 700 pages filled with all these whistleblowers. Defrauding America, Encyclopedia of Secret Operations by the CIA DEA, and other covert agencies. Now, it's got a lot in here about inflow and reconnosciuto, but it's a lot more than that. You know, it's about the Barry Steele and the Mina and the October Surprise. Another thing, I'm glad I saw that. October Surprise is intimately involved in this octopus cover-up involving the Justice Department. And while the mainstream media would have you believe that the October Surprise has been discredited, far from it. I don't know if you're familiar with the esteemed journalist Robert Parry, who used to write for Associated Press. He wrote probably the first Contra drug story in 1985, which is like 10 years before Gary Webb. But the first Contra drug story. But anyway, he's the guy who knows more than anything else in the country about the October Surprise. He now runs this fantastic website called Consortium News. And, you know, he's got just chapter and verse on that website that's basically showing that the October Surprise conspiracy scenario, that the hostages were held until Reagan entered office, you know, the deal had been made with Bush and Casey in Paris, that this is all but proven at this point. And then the news media would have you believe the opposite.
Yeah, I'd like to get him in on his. That's a great show. October Surprise would be a great show. Hey, back to real quick to Iran-Contra, and I think even October Surprise. You know, I interviewed Frank Sturgis's nephew, who was an interesting guy himself. He's a law professor today, and he's actually his name is Jim Hunt, and he's actually.
I've been in touch with him.
Okay, great. Now he says that Sturgis was involved in Iran-Contra. What do you know about that?
I'm not really sure of that. Certainly people around him were involved with these shrimp boats and the smuggling of cocaine.
Right.
Some of his associates were. I've never heard that he involved in that directly. He is involved with stolen cars to Mexico, involving this CIA asset named Miguel Nasser Haro, who's a really interesting figure. So I know about that connection, but the Iran-Contra specifically, if there's a Sturgis connection, it eludes me, but certainly his pals were mixed up in it.
Okay, very interesting. And when you talk to Jim Hunt...
By the way, does he think that Sturgis is the tramp? Because I just heard Weberman. You uploaded the Weberman program.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard it before. I guess it was in the pay section. Now it's in the free section.
Yeah, the one where he discovered the KKK connection. Yeah, that was in the pay section. I got another interview with him in the pay section. I'll send it to you. I'll give you a membership. You just sign. You get it for free. But the thing is, I did a great.
After all, yes, he broke the story about the tramps, but he still insists that they're hunting Sturgis, and I don't think it's true. And even Hunt's son doesn't. He says that his father was not the old man tramp. So what does Weberman say to that?
Listen, you know, you gotta, like, the guy's he's done a great body of work in his career. He just testified down in the parliament.
I can't believe those nodules he did are amazing. They're amazing, the amount of information in there.
Yeah.
But he's got his flaws and blind spots.
Hey, of course he does.
He's like, he's an ultra-Zionist.
I know.
He's like a rabbit.
Wait,
okay.
You know what he says?
You know how many LaRouche connections there are to all these people? LaRouche is the one who introduced Steinberg to Casserlero.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait, get this. Back to Weberman for 1 second. Because there's another interview where he cursed too much, and he was making French fries during the interview, you know. But if I can get him, I get him. And at the end, I said, is there anything you regret in your life? And he goes, yes, the civil rights movement. And I says, whoa, why? You know? And he goes, because of Obama. Obama's an anti-Semite. It's like everything, you know, but he was with the JDO. He was like one of the leaders in the Jewish
defense. He doesn't like Black Lives Matter, does he?
No, of course not. Yeah.
You know, I take a nuanced view of Black Lives Matter. I don't know if I want to get into that now, but anyway.
Yeah,
I certainly don't have this view, but I'm not sure I have your view of it as being totally benign.
I'm going to give you an access tonight. Just send me an email.
Okay.
Now, with the Casserlero and prompts, how much are the Bushes involved in that?
It's more Reagan, but it's the Bush people also. But it's mainly this malfeasance that was going on in the Justice Department when Reagan was president, and this involves Meese, Jensen, Earl Bryan, whose name I haven't mentioned, but he's a key figure in all this and profiting off of this thing and making trips overseas. There's no question that he's involved in this. I mean, the other people, Videnix is a guy I want to get into. But let me just get into this other thing real quick.
Go ahead.
This is apparently in the documents regarding the Justice Department. There is, and there's no question about this, there's a highly classified list of commercial companies acting as cutout for the Justice Department for their covert intelligence agency, the OSI. Why does the Justice Department need commercial cutouts? And if they do have them, it seems like they should have used them rather than this method that they used that left this piece of paper that then got sent to the Hamiltons, the smoking gun that I read earlier. It seems they should have used one of those cutout companies instead of going this route. But I don't know. What do I know?
That's a very interesting question. Hey, back again, too. Now, you mentioned before that they had exotic weapons. The Contras were being trained in exotic weapons. What kind of weapons?
Well, I think this involved, night scopes and so on.
Oh, okay.
I don't think this, maybe, I don't know. There's something that comes up in the paperwork, I believe, about fuel air explosives, but I don't think anything like that was going to the Contras.
Okay. All right, we're getting down.
I wish I don't have it in front of me. What exactly the nature of the weaponry?
Okay, we're getting down to like the last.
But the Contras, certain Contras like Eden Pastor were brought to the Cabazon Reservation to view this. That's confirmed. And a lot of this is in mainstream media, like the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco Examiner. A whole lot of other papers. This is not fringe information. And the stuff about the drug rings, of course, made the newspapers to some extent. Now, I had something there about the drug tug.
Yeah.
I suggested that you ask me about the connection between the famous drug tug case and the octopus.
Yeah, I thought that was a typo. What is that story then?
There was this huge drug bust of this barge in 1988 coming into San Francisco Harbor. This thing contained 47 tons of hash and 13 tons of marijuana coming from, I don't know, Far East or something, but offloaded from another boat. And apparently the DEA knew about the barge, before the thing was loaded. They were expecting this. And the captain was and his relatives were the ones who were, skippering the boat, and they were the ones who were arrested. All the charges against the family were dropped, despite indications that some of the family had been involved in drugs. And Calvin Robinson took the entire rap. Now, Calvin Robinson was in prison with, the Falcon and the Snowman guy?
Yeah, I had one of them on my show. I had the guy that wrote the book, Vince Font.
This guy was in prison with him. So this is where the espionage aspect mingles with the drug thing again.
Which one, the Falcon or the Snowman? Which one?
The same lawyer.
Oh, really? Which one, the Falcon or the Snowman?
I don't know.
Oh, it's important.
Well, I don't know.
Because
do you know their names?
Boyce or something like that. Someone in the chat one's going to know because he hates him.
Boyce. I think it was Boyce.
Okay, Boyce was the Falcon. And did you know that he escaped from prison for like 13 months?
This guy harbored him. Yes, I think this guy harbored him.
Oh, really? Who's the guy you're talking about again?
This, and I think this guy, Calvin Robinson's the name of the skipper of the boat.
Right.
But this is the part where he ties into Inslaw. And I know he probably did this as gray mail after he got arrested, so there may not be much to it. But one of the guys that was implicated by Reconnor Shooter, one of the Justice Department officials that was involved as being definitely one of the guys who instructed him to illegally convert the software, was this guy Peter Videnix. And Peter Videnix insisted he didn't know Reconnor Shooter. But Calvin Robinson claimed that he personally drove Videnix to the Cabazon Reservation. So it's not corroborated. And I guess Calvin Robinson has a reason to lie. He's mixed up with this lawyer who's involved with this espionage thing. And, what perfect thing to try to blackmail the government with this thing. Because the government does have a lot to hide in this case, obviously.
Now, why do you think that the guy, the Falcon, was hiding out with this guy Robinson? What makes it come to that conclusion?
He knew from jail. Just because they knew each other from jail.
Because the whole circumstances surrounding...
The lawyer had some culpability. I forget. The lawyer's named this thing a black hat in this later on. I forget his name, but...
Get this. This guy, the Falcon, he had his own private area, like a gym or something, at the jail where he can go stay all the time privately. He had like a private accommodations. Then when he escaped, supposedly he escaped and he was foraging for food for a month out there, and then hitchhiked his way back. Imagine if you're in the woods, man, for Ted. You're in the woods for a month with no toilet paper. You can't shave, you can't shower, and you've been eating berries and squirrels, right? And then someone's going to give you a ride in their car. You're going to hitchhike and they're going to give you a ride near the prison? That's the story.
Well, okay, and then why did he have it so good in prison? Did he have a lot of money, or did it wasn't anything special for him? You said it was a special deal for him.
Yeah, he had some kind of special privileges in the prison. Then when he got out, he robbed like 13, 14 banks. And then he got
that was mentioned.
Yeah.
And Calvin Robinson was charged with these bank robberies, but they said that they dropped the charges against him, and that Boyce, I think it was Boyce, took the rap for those bank robberies. But that's when this drug charge thing happened later, if I've got the chronology right.
Okay, very interesting.
But this was like this. They said this was the biggest hashish bust ever made in U.S. waters. 47 tons of hashish, and I said 13 tons of marijuana. When I first studied the octopus, I had no idea how this connected to it. It wasn't until I saw the book by Sherry Seymour that I realized that this drug ring was part of what Danny Casserlero was investigating, and this Philip Arthur Thompson ordered the murder of this guy in San Francisco named Maraska, who was found hogtied, drug execution murder. And that murder had been carried out ordered by John Philip Nichols, who ties back into the Cabazon Reservation and CIA connections, real shadowy figure. And there's two sinister figures named Nichols in this cast of characters. It's Robert Booth Nichols. In fact, that's one thing that I remember Peter Dale Scott saying about this whole thing, that this scandal, or concatenating series of scandals, more than anything else that he's been reading about, really smacks of being dangerous to someone who gets too close to it.
Yeah, I would agree. And that reminds me, with Danny Casserlero, his notes, now much of his notes disappeared, but how much of his notes remained?
Well, that's the good question. I think he probably just used what he needed for those interviews that he was conducting, and maybe he had duplicates of stuff, but I'm really getting the impression that he had a lot of stuff left at his house and with friends. So much of his material and his manuscript itself did eventually get released. So I don't know what they got from that hotel room, but it may have been a critical part of the story, but it wasn't all of it by any means. And then they had that note in his shoe, which they didn't find, which the killers, if he was killed, didn't find, and I forget what that note said. And I noticed that who turns up as one of the authorities saying that, oh yeah, he killed himself, with both Foster and Casserlero, is Dr. Henry Lee. You remember that guy?
Yeah, I got my picture taken.
He's like a cover-up man. They bring out, they trot out.
Yeah. I met Henry Lee. I got my picture taken with him. We're out of time. And now a word from our sponsors. Emailrevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey, Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online, email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages. Create a report that you can use in court. Email revealer.com, 800-572-9762. The Opperman Report is brought to you by aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law. Silk City Hot Sauce. A small batch hot sauce prepared with farm-grown peppers. Rich and vibrant taste, no artificial ingredients, 100% pure goodness. 8 flavors from mild to wild. The sweet and spicy Mango Madness, the green jalapeno sauce called Aztec Attack. The Dragon features fire-roasted peppers and pure Vermont maple syrup. Killer hot sauces for the true hot sauce fanatic, a blend of ghost peppers, habanero peppers, honey, and garlic, and more. You gotta see the bottles, too. Each flavor has original comic book artwork. You gotta see them. Go to SilkCityHotSauce.com. SilkCityHotSauce.com. Enter promo code ED, ED, to save 15%, and you'll also receive a free bottle of hot sauce. Hey, if you have something you want to promote, like a business or a website, you got a big event coming up, consider advertising on the Opperman Report. We have excellent advertising rates for you. We're on KCAA on 3 different frequencies on AM/FM in California, KSHP 1400 AM in Nevada, WWPR in Florida, the Tampa Bay area, 1490 AM, and also WWNN, which is on the east coast of Florida, all the way from Miami up to Port Bay, with 175 miles of I-95. The advertising rates are very affordable. Once your ad goes up and we play the show on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, those ads stay up there forever. And then we play repeats every single night of classic Opperman Report shows. And your new ads will be inserted into those repeats that play every single night. So the saturation is incredible and the rates are very affordable. Contact me at oppermanreport@gmail.com.